Hello, I'm Baird Stiefel, and I'm here to talk to you today about the multi-jurisdiction, multi-hazard mitigation plan update. This update was worked on by a planning team from the Fairbanks North Star Borough that included people from emergency operations, community planning, and land management. It's also a cooperative effort with both cities. So from the city of Fairbanks, we cooperated with people from the engineering department and the fire department, and the city of North Pole, the fire department, and the public works department. I'd also like to highlight the subject matter experts and stakeholders that were key to the success of this plan. The National Weather Service Fairbanks office, the University of Alaska Fairbanks faculty, Alaska Center for Climate Assessment and Policy, the Alaska Fire Science Consortium, and the Alaska Division of Forestry Fairbanks office, Fairbanks International Airport, Alaska DOT and Public Works Fairbanks area, local utilities, and local fire departments. All their input was key to the success of this plan. Why do we need a mitigation plan? A mitigation plan helps prepare our community for natural hazards. It helps establish area-wide pre- and post-disaster mitigation priorities. And it's required by FEMA and the State of Alaska Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management to receive non-emergency disaster assistance. I'd also like to highlight at this point what mitigation is. Mitigation are actions taken to lessen the impact of a disaster. So if we were going to use like driving in a car, for example, you wear your seatbelt, which helps mitigate against a crash, how you are damaged if a crash occurs, and your airbags are also mitigation measures. So just think of that kind of like seatbelt and airbags for our community. So there are some additional requirements for plan updates. So the plan must describe changes in development that have occurred in hazard zones or increased or decreased the vulnerability of each jurisdiction since the plan was approved. So probably our main change since the last plan was written in 2014 right now was with the bed down of the F-35 squadrons at Eielson Air Force Base, North Pole area kind of had a housing boom. A lot of single family and multifamily residences were built that really increased the amount of new construction in the area since the last plan was updated. And then it must describe the status of hazard mitigation actions in the previous plan by identifying those that have been completed and not completed. And I will cover that later in my presentation, some examples of successes from the last plan. And then the plan must describe if and how any priorities changed since the plan was previously approved. So what does this plan do? So the goals and objectives and strategies of this plan are to identify long-term capital improvement projects. And often capital improvement projects are something each jurisdiction is working on anyway, but we can use mitigation funding and mitigation priorities to make those safer. So when we have a public building that may be used as a concert venue, an athletic arena, but has other uses such as a shelter, an alternative care site during COVID or other medical emergencies, making sure that we make sure it's able to withstand earthquakes and other things and have backup power systems that can keep it powered and operational for emergency uses is very important. It also suggests possible changes to ordinance or existing plans that can help mitigate risk. And it fosters public education and outreach, and it establishes grant eligibility and priorities. It's important to note that this plan in itself is non-binding. It does not obligate funds or policy changes. It simply justifies making future decisions for plans that do. So what are the plan goals? The plan goals are to protect public safety and loss of life, to reduce harm to existing and future development, and to prevent damage to the unique economic, cultural, and environmental assets in the Fairbanks North Star Borough, City of Fairbanks, and City of North Pole. We'd like to minimize operational downtime and accelerate recovery of government and businesses after disasters, and reduce the cost of disaster response and recovery and the exposure of risk to first responders. The plan also helps accomplish other community objectives such as leveraging capital improvements, infrastructure protection, open space preservation, and economic resiliency. So the plan update process, this is what we did to update this plan. So we conducted a spatial analysis of hazards and vulnerabilities where we were able to overlay GIS hazard layers over our existing population points and infrastructure in the community and determine which areas and which infrastructure and which people were at most risk from the various natural hazards we looked at. We assessed the status of mitigation actions from the 2014 hazard mitigation plan, those that have been completed, those that are still need work, and whether we still wanted to continue that path of those actions. We reviewed current hazard studies, state and community plans, publications, and actions. We assessed development trends in the area, and we worked with subject matter experts that are leaders in their field to get the best, most current information we could when determining the plan and outlining the hazards. We also did public outreach and input. There was kind of a continuous long-term effort for about 4 or 5 years by both Fairbanks North Star Borough Emergency Management and Community Planning, and you may have seen us at various events such as the IEBA Home Show, the fair, and Go Winter Expo, where we had booths and discussed hazards with the public. Additionally, the emergency management has hosted many classes and done direct outreach to people in senior homes, et cetera, and had a large amount of conversations with the public. Additionally, due to COVID, the last year we had to look at alternative means of getting public input. So in August, we created a survey that allowed the public to highlight which hazards were more important to them and which mitigation actions they felt that the plan should focus on. And then after doing all the previous things, we completed a draft plan, which was released for public review on January 11th for a 30-day public review and comments of the draft plan. So which hazards does the plan profile? So also, if you look at the slide that I'm currently on, that's the question 8 from the survey. So that shows the public's input on slides. So cryosphere. Cryosphere is the portion of the Earth's surface that it contains frozen water. So in our case, that's both permafrost and frost jacking action that happens in soils that are seasonally frozen. Seismic event, flood, ground failure, severe weather, and wildland fire. And as if you look at what the public said, the public had the most concern with wildland fire, which is true. We do have more of our public at risk from wildland fire than any other hazard. And then flooding was the next concern. Cryosphere was another concern. Severe weather and earthquake were also large concerns. And ground failure or hillside erosion was the next concern. Volcano, which was on the previous plan, was the hazard of least concern, and so we chose to drop that from this plan. So the changes since the last HMP. The hazards profiles. We added new hazard chapters on cryosphere and ground failure, hillside erosion, and we removed volcanic ash from the plan. We also chose to align the mitigation strategy with the 2018 state mitigation plan. We wanted to emphasize all hazard mitigation efforts that reduce the risk from several natural threats. And we made the mitigation strategies more open and flexible to allow participating jurisdiction and critical infrastructure partners the ability to secure grant funding for a wider range of mitigation projects. I would also like to highlight some successes that happened in the 2014 plan. These are just a few of the successes. There were many more, so I encourage you to read the plan. The Fairbanks North Star Borough Area Emergency Generator Projects. Generators were secured for the Juanita Helms Administration Center, the Golden Heart Utilities Sewage Treatment Plant, and Fairbanks Memorial Hospital that all increased their ability to operate in case of a power outage. Fairbanks North Star Borough met all storm-ready requirements and achieved storm-ready status in 2016. Additionally, the University of Alaska Fairbanks achieved storm-ready status in 2018. The City of Fairbanks constructed numerous projects that were funded with using Federal Highway Administration funds that helped improve drainage downtown and reduce the risk of flooding and damage to homes and infrastructure. The digital flood insurance rate map was updated in 2020 with physical map revisions to the Chena Slough area properties. Part of that study also reduced some of the costs to the residents along the Chena Slough because with good mapping, elevation mapping, and mapping of the slough itself, they were able to remove mandatory National Flood Insurance Program requirements for several properties in the area. And probably one of the ones I'm most proud of is we were able to host and attend the following National Earthquake Technical assistance programs, which reduce the risks of non-structural earthquake damage, rapid visual screening of buildings for potential seismic hazards, post-earthquake safety evaluation of buildings which happens afterwards, home builder's guide to earthquake resilient design and construction, and simplified seismic assessment and retrofit guidance for detached single-family wood frame dwellings, which is the predominant housing type in the Fairbanks North Star Borough and both cities, and seismic rehabilitation training for 1 or 2 family dwellings. So this class enabled us to train engineers, home builders, home inspectors on assessing seismic risk, which will make our community safer both by identifying that before an earthquake and then also after an earthquake. If you look at the example of Anchorage, there were not a lot of this training had not been done in the area, and so they were kind of scrambling to find housing assessors and people qualified to actually assess the damage. So we were able to get ahead of this and have a cadre of personnel trained in our community. The plan has mitigation action goals. So this is really the meat of the plan. This is chapter 11, the last chapter. So as I alluded to earlier, we wanted to focus most of our energy on multi-hazard actions and goals. So these are actions that make us safer from all hazards. This plan primarily concerns natural hazards, but a lot of these actions that are multi-hazard would also carry over to human-caused, technological, and terrorism mitigation actions as well. So we wanted first to provide outreach activities to educate and promote recognition and mitigation of natural hazards that affect the Fairbanks North Star Borough. That goal has 5 actions outlined in the plan. The second multi-hazard one is we wanted to integrate community plans, mitigation goals, and initiatives throughout the Fairbanks North Star Borough, City of Fairbanks, and City of North Pole planning processes and projects. So it's kind of a wordy way of saying we'd like the future plans and future construction and regulation that we refer to the mitigation plan, examine ways that we can add mitigation actions to all those plans and processes, which will not only make people safer, but will also open up federal mitigation funds to help support projects, which would require us to raise less capital from the communities ourselves. 3, we would like to promote construction activities that reduce potential natural hazard damages and losses, and support initiatives such as the National Flood Insurance Program participation and repetitive loss property mitigation. There were 2 actions assigned to that. As I said earlier, we'd also like to seek funding opportunities for hazard mitigation actions and projects, community planning, and project implementation, and there were 3 actions outlined with that. We also have hazard-specific mitigation goals. So 5, we'd like to reduce potential cryosphere vulnerability, damage, and loss, which was 1 action. Cryosphere is something that Fairbanks has lived with, the Fairbanks area has lived with a long time, and often people don't necessarily see it as a huge hazard or a natural disaster, but it costs people in our community money every year when their house or property is damaged by thawing, thermofrost, or frost action. And many of you have seen that certain roads in our area are kind of repeat construction every 3 years to repair the damage that was caused by this. So it's estimated, when I spoke with the Department of Transportation, that frost action and permafrost on public roads costs our community at least $1.5 million a year at the minimum. We'd like to reduce potential earthquake vulnerability, damage, and loss, and we'd like to reduce potential riverine flood and stream bank erosion vulnerability, damage, and loss, and there are 4 actions that are assigned to that goal. We'd like to reduce potential ground failure vulnerability, damage, and loss, which was 1 action, and reduce potential severe weather vulnerability, damage, and loss, which are 3 actions. And the last one is reduce potential wildfire vulnerability, damage, and loss, which there were 3 actions assigned to that as well. So I'm going to highlight a few sample mitigation actions from the plan so that you can get an idea of what we are talking about when we talk about mitigation actions. So multi-hazard 1.4 was to educate community members about the benefits of the National Flood Insurance Program, Storm Ready, and FireWise programs. So the National Flood Insurance Program is a federal program that helps give flood insurance to property owners. It's mandatory in some areas if you live within a flood hazard zone that's identified, but it's also a good idea even if you don't, because your homeowner's damage policy, if it does not include a flood insurance process and a flooding occurs in your home, you probably won't be covered and need to foot the bill. And then Storm Ready, which is a cooperative effort between jurisdictions and organizations with the National Weather Service, is a program that highlights your preparedness by your notification processes. Can you notify the community? Do you host storm spotter classes? Do you exercise weather hazards and reporting? And so like I said, the Borough and the University of Alaska Fairbanks have met those requirements. And FireWise program is a program that helps homeowners identify the risk from wildland fire on their property and reduce that risk by thinning fuels, making better right-of-ways, allowing access, increasing water. So it's a very important program. Additionally, in addition to FireWise, the local Fairbanks Forestry Office also gets grants for stewardship programs where homeowners can get grants to do mitigation efforts on their own property, such as reduce fuel load, rent a wood chipper, and reduce the risk. Because the important thing to consider with wildland fire also is that the risk that your property creates is also a risk for your whole neighborhood. So if you make your property fire-wise, it increases the safety and will reduce the chance of the fire spreading to other structures and houses in your area. And then multi-hazard 4.2, it helps fund multi-hazard mitigation retrofits for public facilities. So when you have a public facility and it's aging and it needs updating, that you look at establishing mitigation priorities during that upgrade project, such as increasing its compliance with seismic code, adding backup power for other structures, basically anything that reduces the risk for natural hazards, you incorporate that with your project. And as I said before, that's also another opportunity to get additional funding to help provide the capital needed to complete the project. And then we would like to continue flooding 7.4, continue active and consistent involvement in the National Flood Insurance Program, which is letter of map revision studies, removing repetitive lost properties, and applying for the community rating system when eligible. So if the borough can become a member of the community rating system, that will reduce flood insurance premiums for those individuals in our community that are participants in the National Flood Insurance Program. And then Wildland Fire 10.3, we'd like to complete phase 3 of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan to include reevaluating zones of concerns, flammability map, which basically models how flammable things are based on slope angle, vegetation, and to account for model improvements. So many of these are computer models that have been updated recently since the last one was done, and then also increasing weather, because we've had changing weather recently, and then using new weather formulas in there will help increase the accuracy. Also, we'd like to account for recent development. So houses that have been built in the wildland urban phase, modeling them and seeing those houses and seeing what risk they're in. Weather probability, burn scars from existing fires, the fires that we've had. If you look in the plan, and we have mapped the fires that occurred since the year 2000 in the Fairbanks North Star Borough, and it's a significant amount of area of the borough has been affected by a wildland fire. So we'd like to add that in there as well. And then including an update of the land suitability analysis, which enables development. So the land suitability analysis is a model that calculates how suitable the land is for development based on natural hazard risks such as ground slumping, permafrost, and slope angle, vegetation to try to reduce, slow down development in areas that put, the residents of those areas at risk, and encouraging development in areas that provide good safety from natural hazards. So now you'd like to know public review. So like I said, this came out on January 11th for public review. It's available through February 12th. So where can I read the plan? You can read the plan online at www.fnsb.gov/HMP. There are also hard copies available at the Fairbanks North Star Borough, City of Fairbanks, and City of North Pole clerk's offices. So you can make an appointment to view the plan, a paper copy of the plan. And how can I comment on the plan? So on the website I mentioned just a second ago, fnsb.gov/HMP, there's an electronic comment form which allows you to fill your comments in about the plan. You can also fill out a paper comment form at your jurisdiction's clerk's office. And then public comments, you can also make public comments at any public meeting associated with the plan. So at Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly meetings, Fairbanks City Council meetings, and North Pole City Council meetings. If you go to the website, fnsb.gov/HMP, we are also keeping a current schedule of events. So when the plan is going to go before either the Assembly or one of the city councils, that will be posted there. So we're trying to be your one-stop shop to, that website, the one-stop shop to get information about the plan, read the plan, and make public comments if you'd like. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, please email emergencymanagement@fnsb.gov. Thank you.